Imagine a president running his country from thousands of kilometers away in a hotel suite in Geneva, issuing decrees and reshuffling the military without appearing in public. That's what just happened in Cameroon. 93-year-old President Paul Biya, the world's oldest serving head of state, landed back in Yaoundé on August 20th after a record 73 days away. That's by far the longest unexplained absence of his 44-year rule. So why was he away for that long? And what did his absence cost Cameroon? That's what's coming up. I am Eddie Micah Jr., and you are welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
73 days. That's how long Cameroon went without seeing its president. Paul Biya left Yaoundé in June for what his office called a brief private stay in Europe. His country was left guessing. Was he sick? Who was actually signing the decrees? Who was really in charge? Let's get into it with Quinivet Jokum, political analyst, and DW's Moki Edwin Kinseka in Yaoundé, Cameroon. Welcome both of you to Africa Link. Moki, Paul Biya returned and greeted supporters. Describe the scene and the mood as Cameroonians finally saw their president after more than 70 days away.
Yes, in fact, so many people came out, lined the streets from the Yaoundé Simalène International Airport right to the presidency. They wanted to catch a glimpse of the president they had not seen for about 72, 73 days, and with a lot of rumors about his health, about his well-being, some people even insinuating that he was dead. So people came out to be able to attest that the president was alive and in good health. Unfortunately, a lot of them left disappointed because they saw his hand waving from the car, and on TV cameras too, they only showed his hand. That's where the disappointment came. Again, some of them were still very anxious when it was announced that the president had to receive the women's football team, the Indomitable Lionesses that qualified for that, lifted the African Women's Championship. So they watched their TV on Saturday, and here they were very happy that at least they had seen their president. So there's been excitement ever since it was announced that the president was coming back. People wanted to see him. They never saw him the first day. They saw his hand. And on Saturday, they saw him. But again, they were still disappointed because they saw the president standing. They never saw him moving, raising concerns about his health and ability to move unassisted.
Right. Thank you very much for that. So do we know what he was actually doing in Geneva for 73 days?
The government of Cameroon announced that he was going to Geneva for a short private visit with about a few of his close collaborators. Nobody was told what the private visit was all about, And so the excitement was there. While he was there, there was a lot of rumor in the country. Oh, he's not well, he's doing this. But the government the government spokesperson granted a press conference and announced that the president was in good health, that he was going about his activities, but nobody was telling what the president was doing in Geneva. Nobody said what the president was doing in Geneva. That is why some Cameroonians were worried. The media was worried. Social media was worried. Everybody was worried.
Yeah, you say he was going about his activities. That's what I want you to hammer a bit more on. How was he really running his country, Cameroon, from Geneva? What happened in his absence?
In his absence, a few decisions were taken. I remember that he appointed some military personnel to head some brigades across the country. I also remember that a series of loan agreements were signed when he was not around, and it was announced that they were signed because he authorized the officials, the ministers in charge to sign them. But some of the decrees were actually signed by President Paul Biya, raising again a lot of concerns back home. When I read the decrees that were signed by him, it was said done in Yaoundé, but and was signed allegedly in Yaoundé, since the document is done in Yaoundé and signed, people were saying, how can somebody be in Geneva and sign a document in Yaoundé? So he was working in the sense that he did a few decrees, he signed a few decrees, appointing military personnel, and then loans that were taken also. That's just all we could say he was doing there.
I'm going to come to you, Queen Joachim. Listening to all of this, and of course, you knowing all of this in detail, what has been going on in his absence. Is this normal for a head of state to be away for more than 70 days?
Asking if it's normal, I would say we want to look at what the constitution of the country permits. And constitutionally, there are no limitations to the number of days during which the president of the Republic of Cameroon can or could be away from the country. However, because it is constitutionally permissible does not mean that it is professionally correct. So the 73 days absence of the president tells us that Cameroon has a highly presidentialized system in which the state can continue to function administratively without the physical presence of the president, but not necessarily without his authority. And the fact that there were a good number of decrees and appointments, military decisions, and financial authorizations that emerged demonstrates an extraordinary centralized system of decision making around the presidency.
Right. I hear what you're saying. There are those that are also saying that just shows efficiency, right? He doesn't necessarily have to be in the country. The show must go on, right? What do you say to that?
What I would say to that is the paradox that this presents is that it can look institutional, it can present as though the institutional is resilient, when in fact it may reveal an institutional weakness. The machinery of the state keeps moving, but its legitimacy and ultimate authority remains highly personalized. So the real question we could be asking is not whether Cameroon can survive a temporary absence without, the period when the president is not present. The question is rather whether the system can survive the permanent removal of the person around whom competing networks of power have been organized for decades. If the president can be gone for 73 days, it means he can be gone for more than 73 days. And if the country can continue functioning in the absence of the president, it could also insinuate that the president is not needed.
Those are strong ending words from you. Or it could be that a president has a system in place that still lets the country run in his absence. Is there something that you feel his absence cost Cameroon? Is there something that you can sort of touch on and say, hey, his 73 days absence really affected the country in this way?
Now, the 73 days absence of the president deeply affected the consciousness of Cameroonians in the sense that, I would repeat again, in as much as it is constitutionally permissible, it doesn't mean it is correct. And an absence that was not properly justified or explained to the citizens who deserve to know exactly where their president is and what he is doing and for how long he will be gone is very problematic. This has pushed Cameroonians to believe even more. I'm not talking from a personal perspective. I'm talking from the perspective of an analyst who has listened to different opinions, particularly from nationals. This absence has proven to Cameroonians even more that the system of governance and administration in Cameroon is highly centralized. It's intensively centered around an individual, and it also makes Cameroonians to question the transparency of the Biya regime. Why is the president gone for this long? How long or how brief is a brief stay? The communique of the spokesman of the presidency and other government officials and members of the ruling party, their communiques were clear. They said the president is gone for a brief stay. But the big question was, how brief is a brief stay? If he could have been gone for more than 2 months, it means that he can also be gone for 6 months. What is the definition of a brief stay? Why do Cameroonians have to question over and over again before skinny responses are given to their concerns? So if Cameroonians continue to not trust the system in place, it is also because the system is giving the citizens more than enough reasons why they should not be trusted. And to conclude on this, in as much as the Constitution permits for the president to be gone for as long as he may choose, it does not mean that professionally it is correct for a sovereign nation like Cameroon to run on autopilot.
Right. Picking it up from where Queen just left off, Moki, coming to you. She says the country was running on autopilot. Now, I know in many African countries, many countries around the world, when the president is away for whatever number of days, the vice president is the next in line and who is in charge and is calling the shots in the absence of the president. What's the situation like in Cameroon?
Yes, it is rather, again, confusing. Confusing because under normal circumstances, Cameroonians would have expected the prime minister, head of government, to take decisions to work when the president is not around because Cameroon hasn't got a vice president. But when he was not there, remember, most of the ministers take instructions from the Secretary General at the presidency, who is appointed by Mr. Paul Biya. And in 2021, the President of the Republic gave authority to the Secretary General, the President, that he appoints to take some decisions. And then he, is informed about them. That's exactly what was happening. But all the time, when a minister took a decision that the loans that were contracted, they say is on instructions from the head of state, the President of the Republic of Cameroon, Paul Biya, which means, as Queen was saying, in the centralized system, they may have been given the information to the Secretary General, who communicates or not with the President of the Republic, and the decisions are taken. That's the way it is done here. Remember, a bill was passed at the National Assembly for the President to appoint a vice president. That has not been done. So everyone would have expected or expects the decisions to be taken by the Prime Minister. And at times, it looks as if the Prime Minister is not even informed because there's somebody at the top who is the Secretary General of the Presidency that takes the decision authorized by the President of the Republic of Cameroon.
So in your interaction with people on the ground, Moki, how bad do they say his absence affected them and the country?
Here in Cameroon, the president has been serving for over 40 years, for 4 decades, and his age is really advanced. So the fear when he's not there and with no information given about the state of health is that if something happens, there may be a chaos in Cameroon. I mean, the battle to succeed the president will not be easy. There already comes here and there that people want to take over power. It is known. I remember just about 3 weeks ago, Captain Kenneth Romeo Efudu, who is former head of intelligence or of the intelligence bureau at the president's office, made a lot of revelations. In fact, he is not in the country, has gone to France. He made a lot of revelations about the power tussle and how things may be difficult in Cameroon should the president die. That's the fear Cameroonians have out here. That if he becomes incapacitated, if he dies, there will be chaos. The power tussle may be very dangerous. He even went as far as making allegations as to which camp may take over, as to which officials want to organize, want to seize power and things like that. So that's the main worry Cameroonians have. What will happen if Mr. Biya is not there? Will the authorities that work with him announce that he is not there? Will they hide the news, as you know, has happened in several countries? I mean, in 1 or 2 countries in Africa, when the president died and the information was not made public. Will it also happen in Cameroon? Even if it happens, will be for how long? And what will the military be saying? What are camps that are already formed that think is their own time to take power be saying? That's the situation. That's how Cameroonians actually feel.
Right. It comes across clearly that between you and Queen, the main issue becomes, who's really in charge and the succession of power in his absence and, when he is no more. We don't want to jump the gun here, but that's clearly the sentiment that you both are projecting to me, which is understandable for a leader that old. Let me come to you, Queen, because one of the key things that really stuck out was that Biya, and of course, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Biya reshuffled the military from Geneva, right? This was early in August, during his absence. How is that move being interpreted in Yaoundé? Is this normal, or did it come across as a signal of, hey, what's going on?
It is normal for the president, who is the head of the armed forces, to exercise some reshufflement in the military. The problem is not the reshufflement. The question is always the reason, the motive behind the reshufflement. Remember that we are supposed to be in a democratic country where transparency is supposed to be one of the key driving models of the nation. Now, but when the president is not on seat and reshufflements of bureaus or cabinet of different sectors are done out of the country, and the military in particular, at a time where there is a lot of smoke coming up about different factions that are aiming at taking over leadership, it conveys a simple message. The presidency is even more concerned than the people about the fate that awaits in case there is a riot in the country, in case the infightings become more obvious, become more feasible. How can the regime protect itself? This is what this reshufflement spell to the citizens. It even confirms more that truly there is a lot of infighting going on. There is a lot of power tussle and power struggle going on. And the president is ceaselessly looking for possibilities to reinforce security in his own alliances with the military.
Let me just add to what Queen just said out there. Why the military? You may want to know that presently in Cameroon, there are 3 ministerial positions that's without a minister. We have the minister, Issa Chiruma, who resigned. No minister was appointed. Another minister was asked to work on interim basis. We also had another minister, Buba Bello, who resigned. Another one was asked to lead that ministerial that office on interim basis. There was also a minister who died, the Minister of Mines. It's the same case. I don't want to count the positions of secretaries of state. So you see that Cameroonians are worried. They'll be asking, when it is the military, the reforms are quick to come by. It is true, it's a routine that every 2 years or 3 years, the president appoints people to the head of. But what about where Cameroonians have direct service, like the ministries I'm talking about, that work for the day-to-day interests of Cameroonians? Why have they not been appointed? And to understand that it's not easy to lead a ministry, and this is happening.
Based on what you just said, and what you have all been saying for a while, the sort of instability his long absence created in the country. So let me just ask this then. President Paul Biya is back. Is stability back? Have concerns now calmed down, Marky?
You're asking if with his return, people know that he is back. People know he's alive. They're not expecting what he will be doing as from now, from the moment he came back. As I was saying, the post of vice president is still there. If something happens now, what will happen to the country? Because the constitution now is very clear. The vice president takes over and manages the affairs of the state. We don't have one. When President Paul Biya was re-elected, he made promises. He said, in the days ahead, I'll be appointing a new government. It has not been done. And he also said he will be giving possibilities to young people, to women. They are still expecting. Cameroonians are expecting a lot to be done from the moment he came back. Well, he came back on Thursday. Let's say he worked throughout the week receiving the female lions, and that maybe things will be changing in the days ahead. Some people are even thinking that because of the pressure he had while in the country, he may have been making preparations to come and move things around in the country when he comes back. So Cameroonians were worried there that he was not around and now asking, he has come, what is going to be happening next?
Queen, you may wrap up this podcast with this, right? Is there a real risk that Cameroon's succession, whenever it comes, that it could destabilize a country that has been a pillar of relative stability in Central Africa? How big of a concern is that for Cameroon and the region as a whole?
Yes, there is a real risk. There is a very big risk when it comes to the succession question in Cameroon. And quite unfortunately, this question of succession would only not affect Cameroon, but will affect the entire Central African region. This risk is not inevitable. Cameroon has historically been seen as an important anchor of stability in Central Africa, partly because of its geographical position, as everyone knows, its economic importance, and relatively strong state structures. The danger is that a succession crisis could activate several existing fault lines simultaneously. There is the elite competition at the center, there are tensions within the security apparatus, and unresolved conflicts like the Anglophone conflict, for example, regional political interest and economic anxiety. However, we cannot automatically assume that Cameroon will follow the trajectory of other African countries that we know. Every succession is shaped by its own institutions and political history. So Cameroon still has an established administrative state and a ruling party with extensive structures. Now, the key variable will be whether succession is negotiated before a crisis or succession will be fought over after a crisis has happened. So a planned transition could preserve stability. You know, if we're talking now about the vice president and all of that, if the president of the Republic of Cameroon and Cameroonians inclusively can plan a transition, we could curb the possibilities of a high risk crisis. Whereas an unplanned transition, especially one involving the degree of competing factions, like what we see in Cameroon claiming legitimacy, would carry significantly greater risk. So, yes, again, there is a very high risk for Cameroon to find herself in a terrible crisis situation because of the succession question. And yes, if this happens, the entire Central African region will suffer for it as well.
Right. Hopefully, it will not come to that, but the concerns are clear. And yeah, we'll definitely be following the situation in Cameroon. Now that Paul Biya is back, what really changes, what does not. Sentiments growing about the succession or not. Really good discussion I've had with the both of you. And we'll keep our fingers crossed and our eyes and ears on the ground and keep our listeners posted. Queen Yvette Jokum, political analyst, and DW's Moki Edwin Kinseka in Yaoundé, Cameroon. Thank you both for your insights.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
The silence from Biya himself was deafening. No address, no video, nothing. But now the president is back. How do Cameroonians feel about it, and what do they expect to happen now?
I saw the president returned with renewed energy and is ready to bounce back and resume his office duties with enthusiasm. And now that the president is back, my expectations are practical. I would like to see the promises and commitments he made to young people and the women translate into real opportunities. And I am looking forward to more meaningful positions and greater participation in decision making.
The President of the Republic, Paul Biya, is back. I didn't see anything in him as any problem, but we just know that a man of his age ought to rest, ought to have some head care.
My expectation as a Cameroonian and equally as a political leader are, first, appoint a vice president. The present administration, since he was sworn in on November 6th as the president of the Republic, there has been a lot of cacophony due to his age and other issues that may come along. Camps have been installed within the government, and this is paralyzing the economy, not only administration. he talked about this as being the mandate of the youth and women. Without booming economy, without a functional administration, young people are unable to create jobs. Equally, we also need that the calendar that was stated for the upcoming municipal legislative election be installed and be looked into.
Investors, in particular, were watching closely, and they didn't like what they saw, it seems. Bloomberg reported that Cameroon's dollar-denominated bonds have become the worst-performing sovereign debt in Africa since Biya left office in early June, with yields climbing to their highest level since April. Still, here is the question to ponder. If a country can be run for 73 days from a hotel room abroad, who is really governing Cameroon? What do you think? Share your thoughts on Facebook and TikTok at DW Africa. Listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabi. And I am Eddie Micah Jr. Thanks for listening.
DW. Made for minds.